also how many hours of me that there is on YouTube. So if anyone wants to AI me and my voice, they have almost 100 hours of these meetings. It's something crazy like that to go through, and I'm just like, oh, good Lord. I will be one of the most AI-able people possible, which I think is completely hilarious, given the distinctive tones of the Kiwiness and hay fever in my voice as well. So what we're going to do, as well as laughing about being an AI person, is we're going to run through an icebreaker. So name, pronoun, where we're from, and I've chosen my favorite accessible train station is, because I thought that was an interesting one to think about and to get us thinking on the idea of accessibility. And then we'll run through, I'll fly through the housekeeping, but I want to show you some of what I'm starting to put together in the CMS, which I've just put the blocks together here. And I'd like your feedback on the wording and things like that, just to make sure that when somebody's reading it, it reads relatively clear. And then we're going to talk about data quality. I've got a couple of little things that have popped up, and I'm just trying to figure out where I put them in the order. And then we'll run through where we've got to with the accessibility, with the private beta. Some of you are involved quite closely in it. Hi, Leon. Some of you are not quite so closely involved. So I just want to get everyone up to date. And then, of course, feedback corner. So, icebreaker. You're also used to this. Hey, I'm Dr. J, use they as a pronoun. I'm the hand wavy type. It's now the SME of NaPTAN, because I seem to know it relatively well now. And I'm from DFT. My favourite accessible train station, I'm going to say London Bridge, because London Bridge, with the upgrade that it had about just before lockdown, or that came through during lockdown, that whole central piece is so accessible now for the main rail platforms there. It's so easy to get from one to the other and see where you're going, which is really nice, and it feels nice and open and airy. And it never feels quite as busy as what I believe it is. So that's it. And I'm going to go, we'll go from the top. So Andy, you're going to be the next one up.
Hi, I'm Andy Hole. I'm a he or him. I'm from National PCI, who are, we provide software for all our local authority funded. My favourite accessible train station is the steam train part of Paignton Station.
I need to come down and visit and ride the steam train. It is on my list of things to do. Anna, you're the next one up.
Hello, I'm Anna Wellesby. My pronoun is she, her. I'm from Western Northamptonshire Council. I'll be honest, I don't tend to get the train a lot, so I'm not really sure what my favourite accessible train station is, but I'm quite new to this role as well, so still getting to learn a lot about public transport. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Welcome. Thank you for coming along. The next one up would be Jonathan.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Bigwood. I'm a he, him. I work for Central Bedfordshire Council, but I also look after NaPTAN and travel line data for our neighbours at Bedford and Luton Borough, which is done through the National PTI Travel Line South West Consortium, so via Andy. Favourite accessible station? Well, neither of my local stations are really accessible, so I guess I'll have to go for Reading, my nearest large town, which got sort of rebuilt, must be 10-15 years ago now, with what in my memory is its second new station building. The one they built in the 70s, 80s isn't big enough anymore. Also generated quite a few weekends worth of looking after rail replacement bus services while it was all happening.
Rail replacement buses is something that is haunting me right at the moment. Leon, you're the next one up.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Leon Byford. Pronouns any will do. I'm from Transport for London, so I'm a product manager in the digital team at TfL. Favourite accessible train station? So I'm probably going to give a two in my one if that's okay. So that's at Farringdon and Liverpool Street on the Elizabeth line, just because they have these incline lifts that I think are a rarity in the UK, and I think they're the only ones in London. But they sort of go at an angle. And actually it's at exactly the same speed as the escalators. So it's one person goes on the lift and one person's on the escalators. You end up meeting again at the end at the same time, which is quite nice.
They have those in Sweden, those incline lifts, and I use them in, it's not Uppsala, Rysne, which is where one of my friends was living, and all of the stations on those lines had these incline lifts, and the first time I used them, they melt your mind because they're so different to what you're used to using. Because you used to a lift going down and then you walk and the lift kind of just sails down. It's like a large stair lift is the word that I'm after. Richard Hall, you're the next one up before I rant more about lifts.
Hello, I'm Richard Hall. I work for Ito World, and we have an interest in good quality NaPTAN data, both for our customers and for members of the travelling public. I guess it's hard to think of what my favourite accessible station is just offhand like that. I need to think about it, but I think my local metro station is pretty good. South Gosforth metro station in Newcastle on the Tyne and Wear metro network. It's got slopes, it's got information, and it works pretty well for hopefully most people. Thank you.
Excellent. Richard, I didn't catch your pronouns there.
Sorry, he and him.
Fantastic, thank you. And Tim Rivet, you're the last one up.
So Tim Rivet, he, him. I'm from Artig, and my favourite accessible station has to be my local one, Penistone, because it had, whilst it was classed as accessible before, the old sack barrow crossing across two lines had gaps in it of about 18 inches onto the rubble stones and things like that, but it's just all been replaced now, and it's pretty nice and level, although you've got four rails to cross over, which makes it a bit bumpy, but hey, it's a big improvement.
That's a massive improvement. I can't think of many places where you cross the rail lines in London. No, I do. It's South London, out in near, is it West Norwood? It's by the Horniman Museum. There's the rail station for the Horniman Museum. You have to cross over the tracks. It's one of the few in London where you don't bridge over, that you cross on a controlled crossing. Sorry, I am now that person. It really is frightening. So, super quick, running through the housekeeping. We have a YouTube channel, we have an Eventbrite, and we have a newsletter. Sign up for them. Subscribe. Hit that like button. I'm doing that so that we get the whatever on the YouTube channels. The next meetings we've yes. Also, thank you all for your patience during PERDA. Or the pre-election period. We had to cancel everything at obviously quite short notice. We had absolutely no clue as to that anything was going to happen. Here's Elise. Welcome, Elise. We've just finished introductions.
Apologies.
Don't apologise. I'm pleased that you've arrived. If you want to do it very, very quickly, it's your name, your pronoun, where you're from, and what your favourite accessible train station is.
Oh, so my name is Elise Northfield. I go by she, her. I'm from North Northamptonshire Council, and my most accessible station probably St Pancras, I think.
I have a special nice feels towards St Pancras because it's wonderfully accessible from my house, apart from the fact that there's three flights up to the train that gets me there. But once I'm up those 3 flights with my case, it's a very easy trip for me. If I'm when I was grabbing the Eurostar, because I could run off one train up the escalators and straight into the queue for the Eurostar, which I sometimes had to do very quickly because I was travelling for work. So I've done the housekeeping. Next meetings, yes, we had the ones that were cancelled because of the pre-election period. In August, we'll cover the contact form and indicator data fields. I've got still a little bit of work to do on the contact form and how we might use it. And I want to kind of take you all through those ideas and get your feedback before we extend and do anything more there. And then I have ideas, and I will take ideas. If you've got ideas of what you'd like to talk about, just stick them against here, and I will consider them and have a look at how we bring them in. Very, very quickly, performance metrics. 1st of June, this actually meant that we passed, 1 year and 3 months with 100% uptime. We had 246 local authority files uploaded from June, within June, and our removed stops total is now at 3,249. So we're slowly removing all of the dead, well and truly dead stops in the system. Yesterday we had an outage, you will have noted, where users could not log in from about 11:30 till about 2:30. It was about just on 3 hours. We're doing a bit of a post-mortem to figure out, we know what went wrong. There was a change in secret keys that we rotate. Our process didn't go quite as planned. So we're now looking at making sure our process details what to do if it fails, as well as the happy path. And we're doing a bit of a post-mortem to really dig into that. Managed removal. It's all going well. We've got a few more people joining. Transport for Greater Manchester are eventually going to join, and they will put in a huge bump of stops, because so if you're using Transport for Greater Manchester, be aware that it's the file size and the number of stops will drop dramatically when they do their managed removal. And we're just bringing in Essex and Southend, I believe, as well. Northamptonshire is now split. Hello, Anna. Hello, Elise. It's now in 2 parts. That's all been completed. We've done both the MPTG and we've sorted out all the NaPTAN data problems that we had when we originally did the first split. We've got some nice little tools now that allow us to do this nice and easily. Or allow us to do this without quite so much manual work. So, Andy, I know you want to do some. Drop us a line at the email address. What you need to be prepared is a complete list of all of the ACCO codes that need to move. And then I will double check what we need and come back to you, because I think there's one other thing that we need to bring it together, but that's what I can remember now.
Yeah, no trouble. Thank you.
We do need to put the work into the backlog, because I do need somebody on the team to run the little tools. So we'll try to prioritize and time it in there with them. Data retention is going really well. I have one little problem though. In the Great Replatform, we've managed and redo of people's machines, etc., since 2019. We don't have files for 2019 and 2020. If anyone has a national file from 2019 or 2020, please let me know and get in touch. If you've got them floating around in your systems or anything, that would be so useful. It's one of those things of I knew they were somewhere, but people have had their machines rebuilt since that time. So all of those local files that we were relying on, that people were like, oh yeah, I've got a local copy, and then they went, oh no, that's on my old machine, which has now been replaced. So one of those little things we're just finding out. Once we get them, we'll store them, and we've got some from 2004 to 2011, and then we've got a bit of a gap, and then we've got from 2021 onwards, all nicely stored. So we're just trying to fill in as many gaps as we can. Street versus schema, we're still doing a lot to sort that out. This is what a lot of the data quality. We know about eastings, northings. We've got the ordnance survey tool. There is some coaches and coach references. I've just received a pile of information from BODS about the CNDS. We have withdrawn the 900 coach stops from NaPTAN, so you no longer need to put the coach references in. We've just completely withdrawn that. We didn't migrate it from the old system. If we need to do something, we will do something brand new. We just need to look at what needs to happen, and how we put that in, and exactly what is required. And this layout is also very much what the information will look like within the new CMS run pages. That'll be called additional information on the NaPTAN site. So that'll be going live in a week or so. No questions arising. So data quality. I want to quickly talk about 3 things, because they've all come up in various ways. The first one is localities not in MPTG. Believe it or not, some people put in localities that weren't in NubTig within their NaPTAN data, and we haven't had a checker on for that. There's only about 7 or 8 stops that break this. I'm working with the local authority to get this corrected, to get the information about the locality so we can create it and stop this. What has happened is somebody wanted a locality created. They didn't come to us to get it done. They just have created it somewhere and then referred to it in their NaPTAN, but we don't have the information for NubTig. So we're just sorting that out. It's okay. What we are thinking of doing is creating an exception or an error message that if somebody does this in the future, they will receive an error. They won't be able to upload the NaPTAN file, and they'll receive an error message telling them what the problem is and to come and talk to us about it. I just wanted your thoughts on that. It's one of those relatively rare things. This is the first time I've heard of it happening. And I realize that for some people downstream who use the data, this might have caused a few problems. And this is our way of catching and tracking it. Does this seem reasonable and the right thing? I'm seeing a nod from Andy and raised eyebrows in the idea that somebody would do this.
Well, how did it get past the NPTIG ID? Because that has to be part of the locality. They just guessed. Oh, right, okay.
They just made one up. So yeah, I've got a little bit of work. I'm not going to dob in who it was because I'm working with them to resolve it. It's one of those things of I don't believe they realized quite what they were doing, and they thought that they had done all the things that they needed to do, not realizing that only we in the central team can edit MPTG. So they'd created a new locality on their local system and hadn't told us about it. It also raises questions as to how you can create localities on different systems, but that's an entire people don't fail, systems fail. Let's have a look at what systems they were using and do something like that. We're also doing a catch on our side just to make sure that if this happens again, if this sort of slips through people's systems, we catch it. I'm seeing that makes a lot of sense. Does this raise a red flag for anyone in any way, shape or form? Fantastic. I'll just put all green. I'm just going to put that on it's going to go into our backlog and we'll have a look at, and I'll let you know when we've been able to put it in. The next thing, and this has come through, because Wales especially had a lot of corruption in some of the names, and this is where their data's gone through one or two different systems, and you might notice that some special characters were coming across as those weird UTM versions. So what we are thinking of doing, and I realize I'm nullifying myself by referring to the schema. There's a set of invalid characters which we check. There's also a set of characters that we suggest not to be used, which have been used by a number of people within their NaPTAN and MPTG place and common names. So what we are looking at doing is turning on a much stricter validation checker for the text fields that will check for anything in these two lists and reject any file that's got it. So what we did was we then ran a check and discovered there was a couple of local authorities that have been using a / or a backslash in most of their naming conventions. So we've gone to those local authorities and just said, we would like to turn this on. If we turn this on, you have 17,000, you have almost the entirety of your system to change. So they have gone away to have a look at how they would make that change before we turn this on, because we don't want to stop them from being able to upload. And then there's a smaller number of people who will be sending you like somewhere between 20 and 100 stops that have some of these characters in them that were valid that are going to be invalid. So that's point one. Point two, this only mentions place and common names, or there are actually other free text fields, and these are also causing formatting issues. So there are issues within some of these fields that are causing issues with Welsh, because the Welsh characters have done that translation thing and then been corrupted and come across with 3 or 4 special characters, as they sometimes do, and that's switching between different types of plain text, because plain text is not plain text, and I can send you a very long video on that because I did some research. So crossing, street, landmark, indicator, locality name, locality short name, and locality qualifier name are all free text fields. Now, I would like to turn on the full-on validator for all of these fields. The one that is going to cause the most problems is indicator, because half of you use OS for outside and half of you use O/S for outside. So I'm going to have a look at, we turn it on for everything but indicator, and then we slowly get people to work through their indicator. Does this all make sense to everybody as a way forward? Is there any red flags? Please, I just don't want to be the only person talking, but we want to tackle all text fields, because then we don't have this problem of only half the text fields being validated and the other half being allowed to have these wild characters that cause formatting problems for people. Leon.
Hi, thanks for going through that. Just to sort of go back to the point about the characters that can and can't be used in stop common names. I mean, to be honest, ideally for us, we would really like to have // be available to us to use, because that is how we display bus stop names on our website and in our app and so on. And that's really how we would sort of call a bus stop, or many bus stops that would have a /. And I mean, we sort of see it as a kind of an annoying thing, really, that NaPTAN doesn't support /. And I'll just note that it kind of says here that you've got 2 tables. One, the first one sort of says that these characters are reserved, and the second table is about characters that are discouraged. So I mean, the way I kind of read the schema is that the bottom table is it's not that these are explicitly disallowed, but that they're only discouraged. That and I think the point about that is the / is kind of may be used to sort of say that these are alternative names, but actually the way that we use it is to sort of delimitate two streets a lot of the time.
Yep.
So I think in that sense, it's not the fact we don't use slashes to say these are two different names for the same stop, but we instead use it to kind of disambiguate between various stops with similar names.
I know that you use them, for example, Elephant and Castle London Road and Elephant and Castle New Kent Road. So I'm very aware of your usage of them, and this is why I thought to have this discussion, because one of the things that some of the tilde, the whatever these are, the doofs, and the plus are the ones that seem to crop up most when Welsh fails. We could look at taking / out of the exception list. So we can either take a field out of the exception list or take a character out of the exception list. And I'm happy. That's why I wanted to have this discussion before we get into turning it on and trying to resolve these weird data corruption problems that come through. And I'm just going to put Elephant and Castle / New Kent Road.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have that discussion, and of course, if there are systems that cause that there's a problem with that cannot handle these for some reason, then we would sort of need to sort of think about that. But I think if there is that opportunity to kind of allow forward slashes, then that would be great for us. And probably what I should do is kind of look at our kind of what we call like our sort of names for them, and see what characters, if there are any other characters that we use that are in either of these tables.
Yeah, and I will bring you a list of all of the stops from you that are hitting any of this, and I'll get that double checked. So thanks. Who's next? Tim, you're the next one.
Yeah, I mean, there really shouldn't be a problem with the invalid characters because they've always been invalid, so there really shouldn't be a problem with that. Some of the not to be used, particularly the forward and backslashes, I wonder how many of those could be dealt with by concatenating fields, because the original aim was to not have those being used in names, because concatenation should be used different fields to build things up, rather than trying to put all of the information into one field to allow for different purposes and things like that. So I wonder how much of that problem could be solved by looking at some concatenation or deconcatenation, depending.
Mm-hmm. South Yorkshire have used slashes to concatenate a number of fields together within the common name, and that's why we're working with them, because that's the pattern that they have been working to, and we recognized it. I knew the moment we started to turn this on. The other thing is, yes, these are not allowed, but they're only not allowed in 2 fields, and it's the other fields where these characters appear that are causing issues for some of our downstream consumers. So that's why we're calling it a stricter checker, because we want to balance the work that we're asking people to do to clean up their data with ensuring that downstream people have a really good set of uncorrupted data. And as far as I'm aware, the current validator only checks 2 of the fields, which is the place and the common name and short common name, and it doesn't check these other fields where you can have those invalid characters in them. So that is also part of what we want to turn on, and this is literally using the XSD and all the validation rules that existed. So which is why it's one of the few times that I'm referring to the schema and going, the problem is the schema only refers explicitly to 2 fields. It doesn't refer to all of them. And that's why I also want to look at all of those free text fields and just ensure that people are aware that we'll be changing them, we'll be changing the validation, but I want to roll this in very slowly, but also understand where we put in exceptions. Like, for example, let's make sure that if we can, the / is still allowed, maybe only in some names and not in others. So I'll work with the team to look at how we do exceptions to the validation, and we're calling this super validator, because it will validate all the text fields and not just those couple that are being validated now. Does that make sense, Tim?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it will be. I mean, it's an interesting thing that it was missed 20 odd years ago, because it should have been applied to everything, if you ask
Absolutely.
me. I think the important thing will be to document it and push out a document note to everybody for future reference, along with there's a number of other things that would probably benefit from some advice notes or something like that pushed out, so people can go somewhere and know what the rules are, because some of the problem is they're not documented at the moment, clearly.
Or they're documented in a very large document that's a little bit inaccessible.
Yeah.
This is why I wanted to clarify this, because this is something that I would put up on the CMS. And make very clear on there, because it's the perfect place. It's going to be centrally held. It's going to be held where you put up the data, and it's going to be held near information on things like how to write a name and stuff like that. Thank you for that. Elise?
The only thing that I was going to say is, has this been looked at through the eyes of people who don't have very good eyesight or are not able to read properly, thinking about the end user and how they read bus stop data? Does this conform with the National Centre for Blind People's perception of which characters are easier to read or not for people who have imperfect sight?
No, and that's a really good thing that I will go off and take that through. I will. I need to talk to DipTech in a week's time or so. So I'll take this to them as well. So I'm just going to say, take to DipTech.
Certainly, people with either poor visibility or those who are dyslexic will definitely have issues with specific types of characters. So it's always worth making sure that you avoid those, or if you have to use individual characters, unique characters, making sure that you have sufficient space either side so that they can identify that it is actually a character and it doesn't just get mixed up with all the other information that's on there.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Thank you so much for that. Richard?
So I was just going to suggest talking about the oblique strokes. I think they are conventionally used at bilingual locations, aren't they? Like in Scotland and Wales, where the oblique stroke is actually on display on station name boards and signposting and things like that. And there's a similar convention applies in other parts of Europe in bilingual countries like Belgium and Switzerland and so on. You commonly see a lot of railway stations with oblique strokes because the place name is different in more than one language. So I think it would be useful to keep that.
So here is the interesting thing. If we wanted to bring in alternative languages and use concatenation to display those alternative languages, the display would be a concatenation of the two, and we're talking about what is in the name field, the common name field, and things like that. So I think that's a really good point, Richard, and we will sit down and have a look. It may very well be that we take the forward stroke out or the backward stroke out of the validation at this time, and then have a look at what that impact is and ensure that we're not causing unreasonable impact to people like Leon, who's suddenly going, oh, good Lord, how do I represent all of these stations? Because I know this is also one of those interesting things of looking down at streets and locality names. And one of the reasons that I started to look at this was that it is indicator, I think, for, or was it street? It was street for one of the problem stops that came up. It was actually the street that was malformed. And it looks empty, but it's not. It's full of weird 8 or 12 weird characters that on some systems show as spaces and on other systems show as like a string of weird characters, because plain text is not plain text. And that's one of those really interesting little problems that we uncovered and started to look at. So there will be more on this. I'm not going to put this in straight away, don't worry. But one of the people that we have started to work with are using slashes to concatenate information rather than spread it across 3 or 4 fields. So we're just talking with them about how they do that, because we don't want them to have to do all of their stops manually, but how they would do that across their systems. Then one of the other ones, and this came up because I'm playing around with what is currently in the help on how to name a stop. They make a big lot of noise about landmark. Now, I know landmark is a mandatory field for insert reasons here, but I also know from several meetings, I think it was last year, that no downstream consumer is using the landmark field. It's there, but nobody is consuming it or using it or presenting it in any way. What are your thoughts? Do you still want to use landmark? I am trying to find somebody to use landmark. I'm trying to find somebody who says, oh, landmark's really good. But landmark, we tried Tourism England, but landmark is not landmark. Because a landmark for Tourism England is something like Stonehenge or Aylesbury Stones. Whereas often the landmarks are things like, it's kind of near where the old pub was, or it's outside of this church, or I can see this hill from where I'm standing, which is, so they're very much local landmarks. And I kind of wanted to take maybe 2 minutes just to get your thoughts on what landmark should be, because you all came up with some kind of thoughts about it, and I just wanted to get your guys' idea. And Leon, I don't think you use it at all, which is kind of hilarious because you live in the world of landmarks. So Andy, I'll throw to you first.
Are there any stops that have a landmark set that isn't in the common name? Because I've told all my stop owners that if there is a decent landmark, that's the best bit for the common name.
Yes, there's actually stops that aren't listed in the common name, because some people have followed the very strict common naming of main road, side road, and then put the church as the landmark, whereas some people have gone church, side road, church as the landmark. And this is one of the things I'm trying to explain to people, that I'm dealing with 148 data dialects, or 100, and just trying to understand how you've all taken the same information and just dialected it slightly differently. Andy is like, yep, all of my people have done it slightly differently to the other way. So any that you look after, I'm assuming, Andy, are landmark, street, and the landmark would be something else. Or the landmark is also the name of the stop.
I don't think we use landmarks separately.
You have to fill it out though, because it's a mandatory field. But you might just have it. I know there are some people who have landmark just as default. Stop name for Andy. Andy's. I'm just going to say Andy's lot. I know what I mean. It's not being disparaging. I will have a look at that, Andy, and send you some analysis and let you know what's different, because I think we'll also be able to spot the ones that you've been running for the long time and the ones that you've picked up over the years as people have come to you for help. So Elise, we'll go to you. I put you on mute, by the way, because we were getting some feedback.
Apologies, I didn't realise I wasn't on mute. I think landmark is obsolete now. Certainly in our area going forward, I'm not envisaging us using landmark because local landmarks change too much, particularly in this day and age. A pub that was the cornerstone of the community and the landmark for the area is now a bunch of flats that bears no resemblance to a pub and doesn't even have the pub name on it anymore. So unless you're an actual local who was born and bred there and knew the pub before it closed down, you are not going to know where that is or what it relates to. So anybody coming into the area is not going to know that the George pub is on this particular road, on this particular route. They won't have a clue. So I think, personally, I think landmarks have had their day.
That's an interesting take, and I like it because it also resolves some of the issues that I've got of we know that it's not being used, and I'm trying to either encourage people to use it, but if people want to use it, needing to define exactly what it is and how it's interpreted, or have a look at how we make it not quite so mandatory so that people can drop it. And again, this is one of those little changes that I think will allow us to clean up the data and to be a lot more certain about what's in there. I'm also going to give a quick example of that name changing, and it comes from New Zealand. There is a shop that is now the Warehouse that used to be a place called Three Guys, which was a supermarket that my mother and grandmother always used to call Goobays, because Mr. Goobays was the person who owned it originally before it was called Three Guys. So she would always talk about going to Goobays, and you had to know that Goobays was now the Warehouse to know where my mother was going, which meant you needed to know the entire history back to before I was born within the town that I lived in. So I do understand how insane local landmarks are, and also how attached people are to those names. So people will still always call the stop by the pub name, even if the pub is gone and the stop is by another name. People would still locally refer to it. So I do understand there's quite a balance to bring in there. Jonathan, I'm sure you've got some really interesting thoughts.
Yeah, agree with much of what's been said. I'm probably going to get told off by somebody, but I didn't realise that landmark was a mandatory field, and I don't think I use it much at the time. Agree entirely that if there's an obvious landmark, then that should be the common name of the stop. If you've got two obvious landmarks, like a pub on one side of the road and a church on the other side of the road, that's what the alias name or alternative name field is for. That's what I tend to use. And yeah, sort of agree about things changing names. I know sort of 20 years ago, I think there was an instruction from on high not to use pub names, because at that time there was a spate of pubs either closing down or changing their names every 6 months. The big one at the moment seems to be schools change their names every year or so when they've moved from one academy chain to another. Schools' names change more frequently than pubs now.
I also,
yeah, with some stops, there simply isn't a side road or a landmark to name the stop after, either both in rural areas where there just isn't anything other than the road it's on, and for that matter, in some housing developments, you've basically got one road that the bus runs along. All the side roads off that road are part of that road, so there isn't a side road you can name it after. There isn't a landmark other than the bus stops outside number 32 or whatever, which I know we were using at one time and seems to have gone out of fashion.
Yeah, I think I could possibly almost spot the fashions within some of the data within NaPTAN as well as to what was the thing of the time. Quick question, showing that I grew up in churches that were not old. Do churches often change names and move around, or are they? I don't mean move around. I don't mean the buildings move around. I mean the church congregations move around and things like that. Do they often change, or are churches quite solidly there and they don't move? I'm just curious because I'm not from this country, and 100 years old is an old thing from where I come from.
Churches, the buildings do tend to stay, but they don't always remain as churches.
Right.
So they do, if the congregation disappears and whichever religion it is decides that they no longer want to maintain the building, they will actually sell it off, and they do become houses, they do become restaurants, they become pubs, they can become all sorts of other things other than a church, but the building still remains. Very much like the pubs, the village or town pubs back in the day.
Brilliant, thank you. Just helping me understand the world outside my, and I will be honest, my tiny London bubble. Richard, your thoughts?
I've found landmarks really useful. I wasn't aware that they were mandatory fields, though. I thought they were optional. I don't know if that's changed recently. But as for commercial premises changing the names, surely if a school changes its name, it'll have been changed by the local authority, the same local authority that's responsible for changing the name of the bus stop. So why can't they change both at the same time?
Not always. If it's a private academy, it's nothing to do with the council. If it's an academy-run one, it isn't the council's responsibility.
But if the school wants its pupils or students to travel by public transport, then isn't it up to them to ensure that the stop is renamed to suit their needs and the needs of their students?
The schools don't think like that.
That's a shame. I would hope that commercial premises want their customers to travel by bus, then they should ensure that the names of the stops are updated.
So this might be part of that feedback form conversation, which is around how people can get in contact with the people what change the data on bus stops in an easy fashion that doesn't reveal your PII information to the general public, who we know can be. Anyway, so schools are changing names. Changing names might not think about bus stops. So, Tim.
So 6 months ago, I would have thought landmark could be got rid of and wasn't that important because it was more trouble than it was worth. But there's been quite a lot of discussion recently about the announcements for the on-bus accessible information regulations, where bus operators are having to fit vehicles with next stop information displays. London have had it for 15 years or so. It's been rolled out across the country, and whilst the core information is the name of the next stop, it's being encouraged in the guidance that a light here for the sort of things that London do for attractions, museums and that sort of thing. And there's quite a lot of operators asking, where do I get this information from? So it might have a new lease of life.
I think that's a really interesting. So this is the alight here for, and I'll put in National Gallery, because that'll remind me of the one that I hear a lot. National Gallery and National Portrait Gallery, because they're next to each other. So it's one of those ones which I don't think Landmark, as it is implemented, is set up for this. Because of the different ways that people have interpreted Landmark. So this might be a really interesting conversion of a field, and let's have some more discussion. Tim, I'll bring that idea and kind of talk about what it would look like, and how we might make those changes in. Andy's about to say something of like, oh dear Lord, please no.
No, I was just saying landmark is optional.
Oh, it is optional.
It is optional, and I can't find it in any of my exports. I've checked 6 of my areas, and none of them have a landmark in it.
Oh, wonderful. Because I had a policy thing that said that landmark needed to be filled out. So there's been a number of people who've just been putting something into landmark. Now, this could be one of those old business rules of the 136 business rules that overlapped and were misapplied, etc., that we threw away. This could be one of those little feedbacks from that where Andy got around it somehow and other people didn't. So I will have a look at who uses landmark, and then we can start a discussion about using landmark or not using it and how we use it so that it becomes a useful field and not a field that has 148 different interpretations of what it should be holding. Richard?
Yeah, I think even where landmarks are supplied, I think a lot of online journey planners ignore them. So if you're looking for a particular landmark from a drop down list on a journey planner or something like that, you just won't find it. Maybe if we do intend to continue using landmarks, then we need to sell them to other information providers, because as I say, I think it's a really useful feature which a lot of people don't know about it or they ignore.
That's what we started to try to do. So we went and we've had preliminary discussions with, Beebe's going to help me out here. Is it Travel England, Tourist England? England. Thank you. Travel England, to go, we have this field, but because it's being used in so many different ways, it's very, very hard to say how you could use it. So if we're going to keep the field, let's have a look at how we use it and clean it up. Data quality. We're topping almost an hour. So just before we crack on with going through the accessibility, is there anything else that we want to raise? Is there anything else within the data that somebody's like, oh, this thing we need to fix? I potentially have one, and I know that it's been one that's Leon's had for a bit, which is the occasional duplicates of the NaPTAN field, of the NaPTAN code. Now, do we want to consider putting in a blocker so you can't upload anything with duplicated NaPTAN codes, or which is a bit of that would be an interesting check, or do we want to allow those in because they happen and Leon's about to explain why they sometimes happen.
Well, actually, I was going to make a different point about something else, but yeah, I wonder if I don't quite. Could you elaborate a bit more on this? So is that where? So you have multiple? Is it multiple entries in NaPTAN with the same ID? Is it the same ATCO code or the same NaPTAN?
No, it's got different ATCO codes, but the same NaPTAN code. So it's almost as though somebody's not quite understood that they're both unique identifiers and you can't have duplicates. And London's the biggest problem child for this, and we usually just handle it by exception and send people through to you to get them fixed. But I just wondered if anyone else was struggling with this. If it's just a London thing, and if it's just a London thing, I'll work with Leon and team to ensure that they get captured, and we can fire them through. Does that make sense, Leon?
Yeah, I suppose in London we mostly use the NaPTAN code field for essentially the SMS codes for bus stops. So and I think sometimes what happens is that like the bus stop will be kind of moved, and so it might have the same like that same 5-digit number might be reused for the new stop, but the actual ATCO code might the ATCO code might be changed, or there might be a new entry created, but then that same SMS code. Sometimes there's just an error, like human error. So there shouldn't really be.
Yeah. So when they happen, I'll talk to the team rather than doing a you shall not upload. It might just be by the way, you seem to have some duplicated NaPTAN codes. Do you want to go and have a double check of what you've done? It sounds like it's where you've taken a stop and you've moved it down the street and you've got a deleted stop or a stop that's inactive and a stop that's active, and we might just even do active, inactive, and check that if they're duplicated, at least one of them is inactive. That might be the simple one. I'll just make a note. And what was your other point?
Yeah, the other thing, and something I know I've raised a couple of times, and you're probably bored of me asking about this, is essentially going back to the sort of common names, where we've currently got things like underground station or rail station at the end of common names, where really we would kind of like to present that just like, let's say, Southwark Underground Station is currently the common name. We would just want to show Southwark, and not the underground station part of it. So it would be useful for us to be able to just show like the part without the underground station or the rail station, if you see what I mean.
Is this, so just double checking, making sure, is this for the 940 and entrance references, or is this for the bus stops outside that station references?
It's the 940 and the 910 data sets.
910 sets. Let's have a chat. That is a really interesting thing, because one of the things I am trying to figure out is how I give Leon control of the 940 stops within London, because that makes more sense than making Leon come to me to do the thing that Leon knows more about. And that it's kind of one of those things that existed previously because it was a technical constraint. We don't need to be constrained by that now. So I'm trying to look at how we would do that and get it into our pipeline. And it's our longer term pipeline. In the meantime, if there's ones that are driving you nuts, Leon, send me a list. I'll do my best. Alex has left the team, the wonderful guy who was doing all the changes recently for about the last 6-7 months, and it's now back to me and BB, which means and I'm the one who's editing a lot of the XML, which just takes time, and it takes time to focus on and do them, which you can't then be across public meetings and doing other data analysis. So it's just trying to block it into my diary. So just be aware, if I promise to do something, it might take a little bit more time. But send me a list of the really egregious ones that you want changed, and I will have a look and see if we can do that, because I control the data. So why should we say rail station when it's a 910? Because people can append rail station. Although Battersea Power Station, it's probably still going to be Battersea Power Station, because I love the station squared.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's fine to have like that common name field include that. I mean, it's potentially useful to sort of say that, but if there were, I mean, I don't know where that. I don't think there's like a short name for.
There's a short common name, and there's also an alternative name. So we could use either of those and have a look at adjusting those ones. Let's have a catch up and have a think about how we do that, and set a standard that everyone's going to follow, so that we end up with not something like Landmark. We end up with these being, if I give you all control and you come and ask me to do it, we end up with everything being in the right way. There's a couple of things, because the person even doing the central things has changed over the years. There's been decisions made, as to what type of stop something is, which isn't quite correct. For example, the cable car, which is the least underground thing possible, is actually listed as part of the underground, when in fact we actually have a funicular which covers cable car, which it should have been under. So there's fun little recodings that I'd like to also approach as well. But this is all in the long, slow grind against data quality. I'll just actually put that there, which is recoding, because now we can remove stuff. Now we can remove stuff we can recode correctly, so that things that are funiculars and cable cars are actually listed as funiculars and cable cars, and not as undergrounds and other strange and bizarre versions of things. Is there anything else before we crack on and talk about accessibility? Fantastic. So, quick recap, accessibility private beta. We're focusing on buses because they're 97% of the NaPTAN data currently. They cover the first and last mile of any journey, and there are only places where the bus is the only transport available. So fix the buses, then we'll fix the complex ones. And when I talk about the complex ones, I'm talking about like King's Cross, St Pancras, where you've got like 4 or 5 different modes of transport all coming together and people need to transit between it and things like that. We've decided to base on our personas on interviews with users being informed by both CEN and the Atkins work, and we should be backwardsly compatible with everything. So whatever we're doing, even if it's slightly different, there will always be a way of translating that backwards into other standards. You all know Beryl travelling to see Beverly and Brenda travelling to see Beverly. We essentially want them, there's a whole explanation, but we want them to have the same experience in a journey planner. We want them both to be able to have the information, to have the agency and autonomy to plan their journeys. And to do this, Brenda needs to have consistent information between modes, operators and local authorities. Currently, if there is information, it's inconsistent or it's siloed or it's not available to the public. So what did we get to? Where are we getting to with the private beta? So our private beta plans was to create a limited journey for Brenda. She'll be able to view accessibility information for a limited number of stops or ACCO codes. So we aren't going to try to do everything in our private beta. We're going to do a small number of stops, a small number of ACCO codes. We're aiming for about 14, 15, which means we'll have done about 10%. Although, because we're going to include London, Manchester and Birmingham, that means that we actually get a vast amount of the population covered by this, which actually makes it quite a useful private beta. And just being aware, if you're accessing this, we are tweaking things. We are working through the data quite quickly at the moment. So if you've got access to the data, things might tweak and change across even within the day sometimes as we tweak some of the data. So where did we get to? So we started off to create a new Olympic data set. I'll explain why in a second. So we're in progress on doing that. That's this green with black text. The green with white text means that we've done it. So we have proven that trunk stops, the stops that have more frequent buses on them, are more likely to be accessible than branch stops, which have less frequent buses on them, because you all spent your BSOG and your BSIP data making your trunks nicely accessible. Bonza, really, really well done. We've proven it in both a rural and urban environment. We need to do a bit more check on a suburban environment. We're going to use Luton, we think, because it's kind of got the right mix of central and, I won't say rural stops, but stops that are in less populated or less frequented areas but have a lot of housing around them. We're still in the process of creating a data pipeline. We're very close to completing this. So we've got a way of ingesting the data that we create, holding it and cleaning it up, doing inferences from that, and I'll talk about how we do the inferences, and then publishing that in a very explicit way. And we have one API that should be ready this week, and then from there we can build out the other APIs. So we're working with a JSON API as the first one that comes out, because everybody likes JSON. more than XML. I have no understanding of what I'm talking about in that, but apparently Jason is more liked. We've created a CMS so we can publish the provenance, governance, and inference. I'm just in the process of cleaning that up, making the first few pages, and then over the next week or so, the help tag or tab will be replaced by additional information, and you'll start to see various parts of the CMS being built up in there. And we'll be publishing the accessibility schemas, and there might be more than one in the private beta phase as we work this out, and we'll touch on that in a second. We also started on some of the stuff in the next column. So we wanted to ensure that we tackle the riskiest things early on. We are looking at bringing in the street furniture data for the LTAs we connected with in the alpha phase. So Elise, we are creating the new Olympic data for 305 for Northamptonshire, and then we are going to bring across the street furniture we have from you. We've got one question which the team should be talking to you about, because there's one piece of data that is missing from your data set that we might need, and we just want to see how easily we can put that in and what your thoughts are on that. So we're going to just have the one local authority street data, and then we'll go back to working our way through creating the new Olympic data for everybody. We just want to do the one to tackle the process of doing it, to make sure that there's nothing that we need to change before we continue on, and then we'll take stock at when we've done 15 or 20 and look at bringing in another local authority that we've got the street furniture information for. Does that make sense to everyone as kind of a tackle the risky thing early on so that it doesn't surprise you and wreck your plans later on? We're also going to publish the way this data is described. That will be by the end of the year, but not currently now. I'm needing to work on how we do that. And we're currently starting to work with all our data consumers, our journey planners, on how they can consume this data. So we've had a meeting with 4 or 5 of the different data consumers. We took them through basically this mural to let them know where things are at, and we're setting up one-to-one meetings with them to have a look at how they're going to consume the data, how we can be involved with that, how we can work through it with them, and also how they will display that to passengers, because this will have no value until it's in Brenda's hand. Once Brenda has it in her hot mitts and can plan a journey and can see the accessibility of that journey, that's when the work we've done will deliver some actual real world value. We want to get to that point really, really quickly. So if we can give it to our data consumers and they can start to put it into their pipelines quite quickly, we can have a look and get a very fast feedback loop of passengers don't like this, they need this extra piece of information. We can go and start working on that feedback. And then later is bringing in rail and metro stations. Now, I know Leon's got a lot of really good information on the underground and its accessibility. National Rail has information at a platform level for a lot of accessibility. We don't have many platforms in NaPTAN. We've only got 3. We need about 10,000. We're going to have to do quite a bit of work to import those platforms and get all that ready to bring in that really detailed data and how we infer it. So this later is actually quite a bit of chunk that we're going to have to spend some time on. How does this all look as a data-y thing? These hexagons are the blocks of data and how they're used. So we've got street furniture data, which is given to us by a data producer, and we store it here. We've also got the new Olympic data that we've created, and from those two we have an inferred data set which becomes the accessibility data looked at through the different accessibility lenses. So we're planning on being able to give more than just wheelchair true false. We want to give the ability to say mobility, here's how accessible the stop is. Somebody who is visually impaired, here's how accessible the stop is. And I think the third one that we would look at for in this that we're starting to look at is cognitively people with cognitive impairments who are neurospicy for whatever reasons, having a look at how they can recognize a bus stop, how they can understand this is a bus stop, this is where you wait, these are the things that you need at a bus stop to make it a bus stop for somebody. These are the things that somebody needs to know about a bus stop as well. Some people want quieter bus stops, some people want busier bus stops for various reasons. How do we allow somebody to make choices like that? How do we give them that information? We are wanting to do some research and start thinking about it. And then there's obviously different ways of showing these. So, data science bit. How are we creating NOD, our New Olympic data set? Why are we creating NOD? We are creating NOD, the New Olympic data set, because these two bus stops here are both marked, they're physical bus stops, and they're in use in NaPTAN. In the Olympic data set, the old version, these were both marked as wheelchair true. You might take a look and go, well, one of them is, and one of them I wouldn't like to try to get a wheelchair off at that stop. So this is one of the things as to why we looked at the new Olympic data, we looked at the Olympic data set and just went, no, we need to start again. So just to give that explanation. So what are we doing? For the MVP, we've called it hand crank, and the hand crank is a lot of the steps we're doing in a very manual fashion or just a very slightly coded fashion to test out whether the idea works. And then if the idea works, we then look at how we can automate that to make it a nice little script or a nice little tool that does the work for us. So we had the hypothesis that the trunk stops are most accessible. So first off, we have to find the trunk stops. We found that we can look at the number of buses per stop, we can plot a histogram and choose only the top stops. We've been able to prove that. We then go and look at the street furniture, and to do this we use a Google form currently, and if you click on this link it will open up, and I have to go through a whole pile of stuff. You may find yourself not able to see it unless you have a Google account, so come back and read this. But this is what you can see. Put in the ACCO code, the date capture, we get some bus stop photos. We now also capture the Google map date. We capture what type of surface it is, whether it's permanent or soft. So grass, sand, stones, etc., because that makes a big difference. We then have a look at tactile paving at the bus stop. We've got a list of all the different types of paving that we can see. We then also see if there's a controlled crossing. Now, we stand at the bus stop and look in either direction and see if we can see a controlled crossing to improve our journey within the visual range of the Google Street View camera or picture. So we don't go looking too far for it, but it's just letting us know, if you're standing at the bus stop, would you be able to see a controlled crossing? And then we've got the different crossing types, which we look through. We also have a look for curb cuts, and we've got an example for the team so everyone knows what a curb cut is. Again, looking at the paving. We then look at the curb height. So we look for high curbs, standard curbs, and low or no curbs. And we've got examples for people to see what those look like, and they can mark what it is. And then we've got other street furniture like a real-time display, a static timetable, a shelter, a cycle lane, footway. Footway width is quite a big one. We're trying to have a look for something that is this type of footway width wide, is considered wide enough to have a wheelchair move there, because if it's too narrow, if you drop a ramp, there's nowhere for the wheelchair to go, because there's some stops where if you dropped a ramp, you'd basically come off straight into a hedge. So there would be no way of exiting the bus. So it's kind of trying to catch those ones where the footway width is very narrow. Does that make sense? Then there's a clear way. So it's about how clear is the road. We've got a very, very nice thing around advertising. If there are people going, if the bus stop is in one of the trunk areas, it's usually got advertising on it because there's eyeballs, because there's a lot of people going through the trunk. So there's eyeballs, so there's advertising. So we're recording this in our sampling so that in the future, if we got a list of all the bus stops with advertising, we know that those are our trunk stops. So we would just have a look at those. It's a slightly different way of looking at it. Bus pole or flag, and also road markings. We've called it road markings, not bus cage, because this made more sense to the team as to what it should be called. And then any notes. And then we take all of that information and we infer the accessibility. So, for example, we assess the street furniture that we've found, and for mobility, we say, does it have a medium or a high curb? Does it have a hard surface? Does it have a wide footway? Those are the three, aren't they, BB? Have I forgotten one? Curb, surface, footway. Was there one more? No, that's it. So those are the three that we're using. Sorry, BB, I didn't catch it.
Oh, sorry. I just confirmed. I think those are the three.
Yeah. So we're using those three values to infer that it's accessible for somebody who has mobility needs, because that's the minimum that is needed. Now we're doing some research with passengers to understand if those three would be enough, showing them different stops, talking them through it. We're having a look at what else they might need. And then we have, because we're not checking all of the trunk, we're only all of the high frequency stops, we're only checking a number of them. We have true, which is we've looked at the street furniture and we know that this stop is definitely got these things, so it is accessible by this inference. Probably true, it's within the same group of stops as have been inferred as accessible. False, we've looked at the street furniture and it's not accessible. Or null, we've got no information for the stop. So that's kind of the core of how we're talking about things. And then we're going to publish that data to consumers, who can then publish it to passengers. Does that make sense to everyone as to what we're doing? We've got we've been able to race down this approach. The second thing that we're then doing, once we've done more of the MVP, we're having a look at how we could bring in AI to help us. Rather than using AI to do the inferencing, we want AI to look for the street furniture. So we want it to do the same thing as we were going through that Google form of just saying, what is there? How can I see a hard surface? Can I see a curb of the right height? Can I see a shelter? All of those things. We have a dependency on the stop being located correctly in Google Maps. We know that that's variable, but we have another hypothesis that locations are better in trunks in urban areas. For example, we know in London that the location's almost pixel perfect. It's like within centimetres when you drop the little peg person on a map. But that is because I believe Google and everyone's done a lot of work in London to make London as good as possible. I think as you start to edge out towards the edges of London, you'll find it a little less beautiful in places out in the other zones. And then we're doing the same thing. We're talking about probably true. We're taking this off to talk to our passengers to see that this is understood. So this is a measure we're using a nod to indicate that a stop it's marked, so it's BST marked, so it has a physical presence on the street and is active. It's within the high frequency group for this local authority, and it's not been assessed by the team directly. So it's one of those stops because we just do not have the power to go and assess thousands and thousands of stops. We're looking at a proportionate sample and then going, okay, we now know that this is the high probability, this is the high frequency group, we've found that they're about right. We're looking at a cutoff of about 80% when we check the high frequency stops. So if we're above this threshold, and we tend to do 3 iterations, we try to find the lower point. If we're if we've reached the end of those 3 iterations, we're like, there's a lot of stops that are within this, but 80%. So 80% works if there are 2 stops in a row, both 80% probable, and the passenger will disembark at the first accessible stop they come to. The probability of being able to get off at one of those 2 stops is 96%. And I've spelt it out. There's 80% chance that you'll be able to hop off at the first stop. So there's a 20% chance you'll go to the next stop, and there's a 16% chance that you'll be able to hop off at the next stop, because that's 80%. There's a 16% chance that at the next stop you will also, if you've gone through, you will also have hopped off if you didn't hop off at the first stop. Yeah, maths, never quite my best, and yes, I had to do the dumbed down, the statistics for biosciences when I had to do it. And very lastly, we have, this is what the schema will kind of look like. Now, we're also having a look at using something like the WCAG model for describing the level of accessibility for that group. There'll be mobility, A, AA, AAA, visual, A, AA, AAA, and something similar for cognitive, to indicate when a stop has more things than the minimum. Now, we're in continuing research right now. This is the model that we're starting to look at and develop, and this will allow us to be able to really clearly express to somebody what is at a station in a very clear way, because what we wanted to avoid was things like red, amber, green, because that's very hard to express visually for some people, and we thought looking at the WCAG model with A, AA, and AAA is something that a lot of people understand. It's a model of this is A is minimal, AA is extra above minimal, and AAA is the best, and it's very much like a star rating or something like that. One of the things is nod. If it's in nod, it will only ever be A, because we can't confirm some of the street furniture clearly. We can't tell if that's a paper timetable or an e-ink real-time display, because we can only see the back of it. So there's a lot of little things that we won't be able to do until we hit the street furniture. So this is future values, and we're just thinking about it and thinking of how we would do that. So these are the shorthand values for the stop across the top that I've just used to describe them. This is the schema fields as they would be. So we've got, is mobility accessible, the mobility level, the certainty, the provenance of the street furniture data, and the data source. So here we've got, it's true. We know that it's an A level for mobility. So mobility is true. It's level A. Its certainty is true. We got it from Google Street View, and it's a nod. If we had the same stop, for example, if it was one of Elisa's stops, and we then had the local authority information, we would mark it as true. We would mark the mobility level as A, AA, or AAA, but for the moment it would just be A. The certainty is true. The provenance of the data is local authority, and the data source is local authority. So it's very, very clear where we got this from. If it's a probable stop, provenance of street furniture data is probable, because it's probably true. The street furniture data is probable, and it's nod. When we move to AI, we will lose the probable stops, and these will be marked as coming from AI as a future value. So this is the sort of thing that we're putting together as a schema. So we've tried to put the schema fields here and what that field would contain in a horizontal. This information we will be giving to data consumers and anyone who comes and chats to me as a JSON, hopefully early next week, late this week or early next week. But I'm away for a couple of days, so if you come and chat to me, you won't get it till next week. And you'll be able to, or you could chat to BB, you'll be able to see the JSON of these fields as it comes out. Does that make, that was a very, very quick run through at 90 miles an hour. Oh, and where we are, here are the questions that I think that people have. Our data consumers, their biggest question is when can we get our grubby mitts upon the data? I believe that's been Leon's question since about day one. Give me the data. The data producers, most of you, is when do you need the street furniture data from us and can we prepare? And that's some of the information that we want to talk about. And then for everyone, we want to have a look at what AA and AAA would look like, and will that model be understood? So these are kind of the questions that for the last half hour, I'd like us to kind of discuss, or we can talk about anything to do with the accessibility piece. I will pause there for questions. We've made great leaps and bounds. I have to say, in the 6 weeks of not being able to talk to anybody, we focused an awful lot on trying to get our data pipelines and everything working as beautifully as we could, because we literally were not allowed to talk to anyone outside the department. So it really focused us on working through a lot of the testing our hypotheses and working through the data pipelines. So like I showed with the now, next, later, we've made some real advances there. Tim, I wanted to explain why we're looking at the AA, AAA kind of thinking for a stop, especially in that we knew when talking to people, there was those must-haves that they must have to be able to use the stop, and then there was some shoulds, something that a stop should have for them, which would be something like a bus shelter or seating. And we didn't want to confuse the musts with the shoulds, and we were trying to think of how to show that, which is why we're starting to look at using an A for the musts and then a AA and AAA for the amount of shoulds that something's got, and organizing those shoulds by priority by working with the users to go, this has to have a bus stop or a bus shelter for somebody to be able to use it. It needs to have seating available, or it should have seating available, because sometimes there are shelters without seats, and that can be very hard for people if they have to wait between buses, and they might choose another stop along that transfer line. There's usually 2 or 3 stops you can transfer between. So it's kind of one of those, just having a look at how we can represent some of those interesting nuances in a way that allows passengers to get that information without having to read a screed of text, and in a way that's easy to show. 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, AA, AAA is kind of a very clear thing that I think people will get, but we want to do a lot of testing on this.
I mean, I understand the AA, AAA, and the concept behind that from the WCAG stuff. That makes sense. I think the real test is the user testing to see whether non-techies understand it. And
yeah,
that's always going to be the challenge, is how do we make this understandable for the infinitely wide range of people's understanding of accessibility.
And I think one of the other things we're trying to do is also use slightly different lenses. So a stop could be, for example, a AA for mobility, but only an A for somebody who's visually impaired, because it's got different things at it. And we want to be able to express that, which is something that we couldn't find within the other models that people were working towards. It was either all or nothing, and it didn't allow us to kind of show this stop is slightly better than the next stop down, because this stop has slightly more infrastructure for you, and then for somebody else show them this stop has only got the minimal stuff that you would expect.
And it's inevitably going to be a journey from nobody's got any understanding, or we've got no data, through to 50 years time when there's immense level of detail and things like that. And I think one of the challenges is how that can evolve. But as long as you've got the data sources and you've got the data and that's maintained, the working assumptions of this is what's needed for a double A in, if you've got, a mobility impairment, for example, that could evolve.
Absolutely.
But as long as you've got the raw data in a structured way, then you can do that evolution and you can evidence it. And if a journey planner wants to be able to deal with the raw data, or wants to deal with the assumptions, or doesn't want to deal with the assumptions that double A for a stop means, then it can.
Yeah. So one of the things is we're not going to give, at the moment, I don't think we need to give out the street furniture data. We're giving out the inferences from the street furniture data and spelling out how we do those inferences, because the street furniture data can be quite unstructured. It's differently structured. So Elise's street furniture data is structured slightly differently from Hampshire, which is structured slightly differently from Merseyside. So they're similar, but they're not identical, and we don't want to have to give to local authorities, fill out this form. We want to say, hey, you got some street furniture data, give it to us. We will look at it, map it, which is part of our ingestion and holding, because we clean it up, we look at what we need to do to transform it so it then can be inferred. And that, because we're trying to take the weight away from local authorities, but it also means, I know you'll probably only give me street furniture data once every 6 months if I'm lucky, once every 5 years if I'm really would be almost my expected, because that's about how long it takes to get your street furniture changed. And so we want to set something up that's able to run in the long term, that is all about, hey, your data can change, we can accept that, we can accept that you've improved, you've got more detail in your data this time, fantastic, we can use that to do better inferences for your local authority. And that's a lot of what we want to just kind of start thinking about. But building NOD is so that we've got something that's not nothing, because at the moment we've got something that's worse than nothing. We've got something that's actually factually incorrect. So if we're trying to use the Olympic data, it's so factually incorrect. For example, the stop that I showed here that's listed as wheelchair accessible, that is not in any way. We want to make sure that what we provide is there and as factually correct as we can be, based on trying to process 400,000 stops in some kind of sensible way, so that we're not having to look at 400,000 stops, we're having to look at maybe 4,000 stops to make some of this.
Yeah, and I get that, and I can see why the approach of it's also trying to make sure that journey planners understand how to interpret this, and that is easier with a AA, AAA. But I will come back to suppliers out there in the market that are going to be dealing in Europe will be dealing with very rigid data structures and standards, which are very different to this. And if we're not we have to bear in mind that in the longer term, if we can't also support those international standards as a country, we will end up either not having that in the systems, because they will just go, I'm not doing it for the UK, you're too small, or we will be paying a fortune. So I think as a stepping stone to that, it's a very understandable, supportable way forward, and I'm encouraging of it. But I also think, actually we need to keep that longer picture in mind.
Given that the SEN standards aren't set in concrete, I would like to get involved in those conversations and talk to them, because the way that they're talking about disability is in a medicalized model. It's about, and it is not, we talk about disability in a social model of disability. We are streets ahead of their thinking in a lot of ways, and I want to bring some of these ideas to them and have the SEN standard look towards our standards. All of this is really easily adaptable. One of the other little tricks that I've got up my sleeve that is coming up is we are looking at being able to produce a NetX version of the NaPTAN data. So we're just having a look at how we would do that. But we've got all the tools in place, so that this would then feed into that. But the SEN standard is nowhere near as good as what we're putting out.
Well,
and that's from a look. And yes, I know it's very
from
rigid,
a user point of view, Dr. Day, I absolutely agree. The accessibility model, though, that's being used comes about through European regulation and the MMTIS directive, which specifies the approach to take. So to an extent, hands behind your back, padlocked and chained to a lump of, somewhere in a deep ocean.
No, I totally understand, but this is why I want us to get involved in those conversations. I'm trying to make connections in with those SEN people. So if you could help me, Tim, that would be brilliant.
I'm on that working group, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If we can come and present this work and just show how we're thinking about it. You're also talking to the person who is parkouring their way around admin. It's a queer superpower. It's how I've gotten my name changed. I've had to change and do ridiculous amounts of name change work to get my name to be correct in government systems here in this country. And so I know there are limitations. I'm also aware of ways that one can work around those, because I've had to for most of my life. So allow me to use the superpower to make accessibility really, really fun and interesting. But we also want to test this. We want to take this to users and get this in front of users' eyeballs, because until Brenda looks at it and goes, I can understand where I can travel and where I can't, and what I expect to see at a stop and what I can't, and what I don't expect to see, we haven't won in the slightest. We haven't delivered any value. Sorry, that was me on my soapbox.
I agree.
Andy, you've been nodding away. Does this all make sense to you?
Yeah. All agree.
Excellent. And Jonathan, we're going to be using. I was talking to the team about doing a little proof of concept, and I suggested using Luton because of the stops that you showed me when we last talked. This stop and some of the stops along that same street were actually very, very interesting. This is the one that's kind of in the back of the Primark on the big dual carriageway in the middle of Luton, and then using some of those and looking around, we can see that we could get some very, very interesting street furniture data and be able to find, potentially in a tiny proof of concept, find some of the issues that the different AI models might have of recognizing a stop. One of the hilarious things, if you remember Hockeridge Wood, which has trees overhanging it, most AIs see those trees as a bus shelter because it's something overhanging a bus stop.
My only concern with using Luton is I know Luton. My involvement with Luton is data. I'm not involved in the sort of day-to-day management of infrastructure and all that sort of thing. That is done by people either at or working on behalf of Luton Borough. They did get quite a substantial chunk of BSIP money, and they are working on upgrading bus stops and shelters sort of almost as we speak. So there is the potential that what's in Street View reflects what was there 6 months, 5 years ago, which may not be the case of what's there now.
Right. That sounds really fascinating. I will take that to the team, and we will have a look at whether we find a Luton-like place that's not spending a lot of BSIP money, but also at some point when they've done all of that, if you can get the information of what they put in at each stop, that is the street furniture information that we can then ingest for Luton and improve Luton from using the Google Street View either by hand or by AI. So that's the next step, because the moment we've got local authority furniture, we will never go back and look and create any more nod for that local authority, because the local authority is giving us the actual street furniture data, and we can hopefully continue to build those relationships.
Yeah, and the difficulty may be tying whatever documentation's been done for the contractors and so on, tying that to NaPTAN.
Echo codes.
Yeah. We're upgrading things, sort of possibly not quite on the same scale. We're certainly doing quite a lot on bus stops in central Bedfordshire. And again, as I think I've said before, a lot of the asset management knowledge is in the head of one of my colleagues more than something that is directly tied to NaPTAN.
Yeah.
So getting the data in a form that I haven't got data that's in a nice format that I can just hand over to you as an oven-ready package now.
Yeah.
And I suspect Luke will be in the same boat.
Yeah, I remember that, and it's almost like one of the things that I want to help you with is sit down and look at what you've got and go, okay, how close is this to something that we can digest? And because we can deal with some right messy data. We do. We're not just, it doesn't have to be strictly NaPTAN. We can have a look at how we match and how we map things across and how we build things up. So let's sit down and have a look. I will get Sarah and Geeta, who are doing the user research, to come and have a chat with you and see if we can get some of that nice chunky data from you. Even if it's more, here's 6 stops. That's enough for us to start with. We started with 12 stops from Hampshire. They had 200 fields for those 12 stops. We started with 12 stops. So it just enables us to kind of have a look and go, okay, is this data anywhere near what we could start playing with? Or is it a million miles? How do we get that? How would we get that across? How would we interpret and understand this data?
Okay. And so just something that has occurred to me as an aside, something that wasn't really related to accessibility. There was a query recently in central Bedfordshire about one particular bus stop and bus shelter. If you approach it from the north on Street View, you get a shelter that looks like it's been there maybe 10 years. If you approach it from the south on Street View, you get an image from 5 years. You get an image from previous.
What's the stop? Can you remember?
Oh, now you're asking. Talk about something else. Let me find it on Street View and I'll come back to you.
Okay, cool. Yep. Just drop the name in the chat and I can go, or a street name, and I can go bouncing to it. Leon, I know that you've been in many hours of conversation on this. How are you feeling about this? Because I know you're one of our key data users.
If I can get my microphone to work. Yeah, no, I think I'm very sort of positive about this initiative, and I think that the plan here is a good one to sort of get an initial data set and sort of see how we go really. So yeah, looking forward to being part of this.
Yeah, I think London is almost an exception because it's got so much curb, so much hard standing, and so much footway width in most places that it's almost accessible by default and then not accessible by finding it. So I'm trying to get the team, rather than looking at the top end and working their way down, to start from the bottom and go, okay, how can we creep up to find that group of inaccessible stops, because it's very, very rare to have a stop that you can't drop a ramp on in London, as far as I'm aware. But I'm sure if I talk to your IDAG group, they'll probably give me a long list of places that are completely inaccessible. Anna, we've been neglecting West Northamptonshire. How are you feeling about all of this? I know this is possibly the first time you've been introduced to all of these things around accessibility. Anna? Or Elise? I know that this isn't the first time you've been through a little bit with us, but can you see how this is going to work with your data?
Yeah, I can. And I think it's a really positive step forward for the consumer to be able to have complete visibility of how they can access the network. And if we're going to, I suppose, thinking longer term than this element, we need to link that into all modes of public transport so that the consumer has a fully integrated door-to-door philosophy on how they can actually get about, rather than just worrying about one little element that is the bus journey, if they're going to be using multiple modes of transport. So they could be using a bus they could be using a bus to go to the railway station, from the railway station going to the airport. And if they can do that themselves, knowing exactly how they get on and off at each individual point, that opens the world up to so many people.
Absolutely. And this is why one of the things that we've got in our later column is bringing in the rail and metro stations. We know that the government's done some really good work at airports, so it'll be about how you get to the airport, and then we can do some work about letting people then use pathways within the airport to figure out how they move around. But that bringing in rail and metro, which is also trams, is the next is kind of that big chunky piece that we will do, because we need to work with the rail directorate to get a definitive list of rail stations and a definitive list of passenger rail platforms, which you'd think would be an easy thing to get, but it's not.
It is. It is. If you talk to the right people, it is. I come from the rail industry, so.
Elise, if you know the right person, please tell them to come and talk to me, because I am.
As an aside to that, there is also, led by Network Rail, there is also a programme of work going on at the moment that I'm included in, called First and Last Mile. I don't know whether it's something that you've actually heard about at all yet. And this is about how we connect the rail industry and the bus network to encourage people to be able to use the buses to get to and from railway stations. So there is a lot of work going on with that at the moment.
Elise, please connect me and BB up.
Okay.
That would be amazing. There's two reasons. I know that there's a platform level accessibility audit that is to about 70% of the network rail stations.
It is at the moment. It's been going on for about 10-15 years, where they're actually adding in ramps and or lifts to every single station to give complete accessibility. Yeah, that's still ongoing. And they're also looking at, it's still ongoing. It's a mammoth task. But
and we want to ingest, we want to take that information in, so as stations become more accessible, it's reflected and passengers know about it on their travel planner, and they're not still making big long loop journeys when they could make a slightly more direct journey. One of the other things that all of this enables, even just having Nod starts to enable, is that real-time replanning when something happens on a journey. So if a train gets diverted, I've been on trains that have been diverted due to emergencies on people on the line and things like that, and you're going to go to another station, you can be told what the accessibility is at that new station, and then you can replan your journey easily from there. And that for that we need the accessibility of the whole network to be aligned up, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do as well. So all of this ties in beautifully. So Elise, please, just connect us up. I'm nice. I promise to play nice.
I will.
Thank you. And this is also the reason you can now, hopefully that makes a lot more sense as to why we started off with bus stops, because we're solving what is a complex problem, but it's a simple, bus stops are quite simple compared to train stations in terms of they don't have an entrance, they don't have platforms, so they're a much, much simpler system to work with. Is there anything else? We've got like 5 minutes left. I have almost no voice left. Oh yeah, here's our starter set, which has also changed since I created this, because we've put in Elise at 305. We've also put in another couple of, we changed one of the Scottish ACCO codes that we worked on. And one of the other things that I need to do is just do the percentage or the population of the country that is covered by these ACCO codes. That gives kind of an idea of just how much we're covering in this, our starter set. So this is a little bit of work I still need to, I'll put the updated one in. But in the meantime, feedback corner. I'll stop sharing. If you want to give us any feedback, does the new Olympic plans make sense? Is it good? Is this meeting good? Was there stuff you wanted to cover that I forgot to cover? Were there things that you're expecting that I didn't do? Just throw me the feedback, because it just helps us make these better and more fun and more interactive. Elise?
Just one from me. Can we have some more in-depth discussion or clarification around the naming? I know we touched on various different elements of it this time and last time, but as we're now starting to get to the point where we can actually create our own bus stops and rename them, whilst I've created the naming convention in terms of the ACCO code and the NaPTAN code to get a consistent approach throughout our area, I would like to be able to definitively, and this is my OCD bit, I need to know exactly how to do the rest of it and have, or do you want me to write it and present it?
So here's the fun. There are 148 different conventions on naming, because there are 148 ACCO codes which have been managed by different people over the years. Although Andy is probably like, no, I'm the OG, I've been managed, some of mine have been managed from scratch. But they have all interpreted the schema ever so slightly differently for different exceptions in different cases. I think it's a really, really, really good discussion. I don't believe that there is a way right now. There will be a number of ways and a number of best practices, and it's about what will work to explain the stop to somebody who is local and somebody who's not local. And this, I think, is, I will happily prepare something up that gives us those two different personas, those two different people, somebody who's new to who's traveling through the area, trying to get to see a friend, and somebody who's lived in the area for a long time, and have a look at the naming conventions and how you've approached it. And there is no right way and there is no wrong way of doing it. You've all just done it ever so slightly differently in different dialects, and we want to work those dialects together and have a look at ensuring that we are doing what we intend to do. Does that make sense, Elise? It may not meet your OCD, but it will be a good and interesting discussion, and I will happily put that in. I'm just going to scooch all the way back. I will put that in too as a suggestion for September.
Brilliant. I think Anna in West may also benefit with her being quite new as well.
You're not the only new people, and in fact, I'm going to be chatting to a few people who are just starting to take on local authorities because people have retired or are retiring. So I will ensure that everybody who's new is aware of these discussions in September, and we can go through it and just kind of talk about naming conventions. It gives me a little bit of time, at least, to think about it, to prepare some data so you can see the differences, and so that everybody feels a bit comfortable about it.
Fabulous, thank you.
And I know, Tim, that you'll be like, yes, that there is a defined way that everyone tried to do it from the schema, but I honestly think it's just been interpreted 148 different dialect ways.
We need to start again because everybody has interpreted it. I don't think you can go back to that. And I said that a couple of years ago because the world's moved on so much. We need to start again, which is why I'm keen to get some of the things about the decisions that we're making documented, because that's going to form part of it. And the sooner we start doing that, the more likely we're to remember what we said in the past.
The great thing of this is, we've got the YouTube channel, which is not a document, is just a vast amount of recordings. This is also why I've been very what's the word I want? I was going to say subtle, being very thoughtful about what I put on the information about NaPTAN each time, because you may notice that I've been recording things that we discussed in several other meetings and just making sure that everyone understands it. That is going to be the core of the CMS. So I only just got it 2 days ago. I've put my first page up. I now need to go and do some editing to make it look a little bit tidier and fix up some typos. And then we'll be starting to bring across a lot of this information so that we can say this is what a coach is as compared to a bus, what a bus is and what a coach is. Because even that is a hard thing to get your head around for everybody in this, well, for people who don't go and drive them. People who go drive them? No?
I would disagree. The conversations I've had about rail replacement and PSVAR and accessible information over the last few months, even people that own buses aren't entirely always clear what a coach is and what a bus is.
So
nothing surprises me anymore.
I am very happy to hear that, because it felt it was interesting for me, because Stagecoach runs buses, Megabus runs coaches, and my brain explodes was literally how some of the conversation went, and just trying to describe what the difference is between them to ministers, because Tim and I now have to go and get people to explain this all the way up the top and back down again as to what is a bus and what is a coach, and why they be different. And you do know the difference, but you don't know the difference. And know the difference, and they do look the same, but they don't look the same, but they are the same, but they aren't the same.
Well, this is going down a rabbit hole. There is an operator in Scotland that uses Alexander Dennis double-deck buses. They are identical across their fleet, but some are defined as coaches and some are defined as buses based on the service that they are operating at the time. So it's nothing to do with the vehicle type.
Yeah. The 50 kilometer limit and the driver break times.
Yeah, and it can be a coach one day and a bus the next. the same vehicle.
Actually, I was going to hold up a rabbit, but I actually approve of that rabbit, so I'm going to put the rabbit away. I use these.
I've never had a
at various
rabbit
times.
hole before from you. I'm happy.
I was going to hold up a rabbit, and then went, actually, no, that was a really, really good point. Yeah, so that becomes also part of that definition of, because, and this is one of the things that I've been trying to explain to people, the edge cases of NaPTAN are where the interesting stuff happens. This is, I was about to get into biological theory. The interstitial gaps between, the interstitial spaces between ecosystems are where the most evolution happens. And then I realized that's probably a little bit too esoteric and philosophical, but it's all of the edge cases, all of those things where things have to be defined and redefined that allows you to build up a really good picture of exactly what the difference between a coach and a bus is. Which is why we started off, you might recall, back in 2020. I believe I started these by saying, so what is a bus stop? And it took us about 6 months to arrive at a bus stop is where the bus stops. And that was our definition, because we went through all of the various variables and ideas. And it is, and people are like, but that's so simple. I'm like, you have no idea of the amount of time that it took to reach that statement. But it makes sense. Excellent. I'm going to have to go because it's been 2 hours and I'm wiped, because this is hour 3 of consistent meetings back to back to back. Is there anything else we need to cover before we go? Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for your time, your patience, your input. As always, it's been amazing to get this level of input from everybody. You don't need to come to the one on the 1st. It's a repeat of this, the same structures, etc. Often with different outcomes, which is the really fascinating thing. And so the next one will be talking about contact forms and indicator field data quality, and trying to show some of the problems there and working into that. And then the next one in September will be naming conventions. What I will try to do is keep like 15-20 minutes just to run through where we are with accessibility within those meetings as well, because that is the big push that we've got on at the moment, to get that accessibility piece into private beta or in private beta to as many people as possible. So we want to keep you informed as to where that's going. I will now stop recording.